All right, I put that on mute, please.
Oh, okay. You got it?
Yeah, I don't know how I did it, but I did. Good evening, Tony Dattino, doing my Live with Tony on Monday evening in the 5 o'clock time period. And I wanted to put a few questions out to my Live with Tony audience tonight based on a couple of, on a Zoom call I had today with a couple of our country's top researchers, and it relates to the Loci method of memory, and Loci being the location of, and it's been called the palace, the memory palace method, the journey method, the Roman room method. It's basically a way of anchoring things that you're trying to remember to things that you already know in a sequence, so that by the context of the sequence of what you know, linking new information to it makes it easier to have your encoding, which then allows and enables recall. So now let me tell you a little bit about what that means, and we'll just use 5 anchors that are present in my area right now. So for example, if I wanted to use the Roman room method, the Loci memory palace method, I'm going to start with that picture right over there. And so with that picture, that becomes my anchor number 1. And I use that to lock in some new information I want to remember to it. So I'm reading something about brain science, and it's talking to me about the importance of food as it relates to the ability of our brain to function properly. So I look at that picture, as you see the flowers in the vase, I say, wow, there's all different kinds of food that are coming out of that vase. And as I look at that vase and that picture now, I can come back and think about the food impacts of carbohydrates and low carbos and fats, all from something I was reading about the importance of nutritional habits to our brain mental functions. Now, the second thing I do is I want another anchor. I want to remember more things about things that I was reading today. So now I use this picture of a sailboat with these palm trees out in the middle of a water field. Now, I could make that multiple anchors. I could actually use more than one anchor, but for now, I'm just going to use the whole picture of the sailboat with the blue sky and the palm trees of it as my second anchor. So there was anchor number 1, here's anchor number 2, and I'm going to make up a linking and connecting to it of the labeling on food. So one of the lessons in terms of food is looking at labels in terms of the percentage of protein, carbs, salt, and sugar, all coming from now. When I look at that picture, I'm now going to see protein in the mix of protein, sugar, salt, coming from the middle of that picture. So that's just pouring out in terms of what I want to remember about something I was reading. And then I'll go just to a third to give you the idea. So now I got food, right? Food, and the different kinds of food we're eating. I'm looking at the mix of proteins and the balances of that. And now I want to remember a third thing. I'll go to my third anchor and put the different kinds of dairy products that I may want to add to it. So I'm now looking at 3 things that came out of some research I was doing all about food, and I'm using anchors of things that are in my presence in my room, happen to be in my dining area room, that I can look at, and as I look at those, I'll remember the key elements of this article I read today. So that's the simplicity of using things that are in a room in your house, could be your bedroom, your kitchen, and anchoring information that you wish to remember and making up these silly stories. And so who would ever look at that vase and think of the anchoring that I was making to that, or the differences of elements of protein and carbs and salt and that, and last but not least on my other picture. So, but the point is that I want to make. We call that the Roman room, or the location method of retaining information that you wish to retain and remember. So the conversation that we had today was centered on, is it better for people as they're trying to encode and then remember things, encoding meaning putting things into your brain so that they're there for you to be able to retrieve at a later moment. Is it better that they have their own locations, their own rooms, their own method of things that they'll quickly remember? And is it okay if is it the same if they are sitting still and just turning their head in a room? Or would they encode it even better and stronger if they were able to get up and actually stand and move in front of each picture? So would it be better for me to encode if I stood up at this picture and looked at it face to face in this fashion versus looking at this and taking elements of it and then looking at the third and then subsequently walking around the rest of my residence and using different items? By walking up to them, does it help me encode by having body movement and sensory movements a part of how I'm going to retain and recall things I want to link and connect to the objects in my room? So that was the big question that we were talking about today. And I project that physically getting up, as opposed to me sitting here as I was doing and pointing to each of the objects, is not as strong as by getting up and physically being in motion. So our researchers do you think that's right or not, or should we do some research on that? Is there something that we should consider for a study on how to help people improve their memories? So let me put that out to my Live with Tony audience and send me either a note back through on Facebook, or I would prefer to my email, adottino@aol.com. That's adottino@aol.com. And give me your feedback on that. Do you find that if you're using the loci method, anchoring to objects in your favorite room or items that you use to anchor thoughts to that you want to retain and recall, love to get your feedback on, do you think it's better if you're sitting in a stationary position and just basically turning your head and observing items around one of your favorite rooms or palaces? Or do you think you get a little bit more in retention by actually getting up from your backside and walking and looking at each item and maybe even touching it or smelling it or seeing it in a different dimension or a different way? So that would be helpful for my Live with Tony audience. That's question number one. Question number two, if I were going to teach you a standard method of anchors, meaning I was going to put out on virtual, I was going to put out in the online memory, in the online maximum memory mastery course, we teach this method. It's a whole module, and we have a predefined standard room that everybody who takes the course learns the process of the loci method by going through this standard living room. And now that has 13 anchors. So I'd like to be able to get feedback from people. Again, if we were going to give you a standardization of a room to retain and recall so that we could then begin to teach you different topics of science or memory, and we're going to use that standard room, would that be as good for you to see in terms of a graphic with icons and drawings, or would you prefer to see a live room? Meaning, if you were to go to the module where it has the living room graphed out and icons and nice drawings and things, would that be as effective if I wanted to remember those 13 objects, as well as if I took you around my living room and anchored on 13 objects in a real place? So does it matter if when you're being taught a standard method of the loci method, does it matter to you if you were looking at a graphic on a laptop, as in a Zoom or a webinar, or would you prefer to be in a live room, all being taught the same elements, though it may not be your own room, but it may be my room, and I want you to remember these 13 items in the room, but it's a real room as opposed to a graphic. So we're trying to distinguish for the study that's being done on the memory training. Do these little nuances make a difference in people's ability to, first of all, accept what they're seeing or hearing, Second of all, their ability then to repeat it and then encode it, and then be able to link words to it to create associations that then, bam, I can now take the words that I associated to my anchor, which you should know, and then make associations to it that will allow you to have perfect recall of the things that you want to retain. And that was the nature of our conversation. So what I agreed with our researchers as I would go out to my Live with Tony audience, and I would ask my audience that I speak to, 3 days a week, and ask them for some feedback for any of them that have tried the Loci. And if you've not tried the Loci method, try it tonight. Look at around your room and take a room, your bedroom, your bathroom, your kitchen, any room in your residence. Just go around that room and look at the elements and the items that are around that and make it a point of anchoring to 5 things. Just pick 5. And then link it to something you're trying to retain. Maybe it's a shopping list. Maybe it's a to-do list of things or errands you've got to make. Maybe it's 5 ingredients for something you're cooking for dinner. And bounce those 5 items against the things against your room. And then think about, okay, I'm in a live room, and did I need to get up and walk about and look at each of these to better encode it in my memory? Or could I have just sat in one location in the room and just visually walked around it and found the same ability to retain and record so that I can use it for my anchoring of a list of words? And that would be helpful. And if you could send that to adottino@aol.com, that's adottino@aol.com, and put in there subject, the Loci method, I'd love to get some of your feedback. So with that, that is my broadcast for the evening. You're now part of a science study that talks about the differences of different little techniques and skills as to how our brain works and how our memories can be enhanced. So consider yourself having a fun part of my appealing to you to be a part of some scientific research that we're always trying to learn from to improve the way we teach, educate, and have people utilize the things that we are teaching them about how to improve their own memories. So to that, have a good evening. This is my Monday 5 p.m. time period. I'd like to see you back here with me on Wednesday, somewhere in the same. I usually try to start getting ready at 4:30. My laptop is still driving me crazy. So if it comes up and ready before 5 o'clock, I get going. Once I get it working, if it doesn't, then you might see me at 5:15. So I've got to get somebody to help me with my laptop right now because it is driving me crazy. Have a great evening, and I'm not sure how many of you are going to be watching Alabama or Ohio State this evening, but this is our final to the football season we just completed for the college level. So enjoy it and hope your team wins, and we'll see you on Wednesday.